Nagi and Reo versus Shidou and Charles, right? Now, this is the first time that we will ever be doing a 2v2 on this channel. And it's probably one of the only times you'll ever see me do a 2v2 on this channel, because usually 2v2s aren't balanced and you can't usually scale them, right? But with this one, I managed to do a little bit of research and figure out a pretty good, accurate comparison between these two duos, right? Now, let's get right into it. Again, like, we don't want to waste your time. We know why you're here. I know why I'm here. Look, let's get right into it, all right? So, let's first go over of the individual ability of these players, right? Now, what I mean by this is what these players can do on their own. First, let's start off with Charles. Charles is a midfielder that has some of the best world-class passing that we've seen so far in the series, right? He is not a prominent dribbler, but his passing is so good to the point where Loki brought him to the Neo Egos League to awaken him so he can pass for him. And we already know how good Loki is. So at this point, it's already kind of established that Charles is already on the level of a world-class passer. And in terms of his playmaking skills, that's where we start to run into a big issue. His passing skills are formidable, but his playmaking skills are immature. Everything else about him is also immature. His defense is pretty good. He was able to, after his awakening, stop Isagi's shot course and block the Kaiser impact. But in terms of dribbling and everything else besides passing and defense, Charles isn't exactly the greatest. His physicals are okay, but they kind of pale in comparison to anybody that does a few push-ups, right? Charles doesn't have any physical feats, but his passing feats are, again, very, very good. But there's not much to talk about with Charles because we only get like one game of him, and on top of that, all he does is pass this game, which isn't that bad, right? So let's also talk about his vision, because he does have meta vision, and it is kind of speculated that he has another eye that has to do with passing. It's not really confirmed if it's another eye or it's just like his eye design, but personally I think it's kind of just his eye design. I don't think it's a new eye. If it was, it wasn't really doing much for him, honestly. But let's not talk much about Charles anymore because there's nothing else to really go over. But let's talk about his duo, Shidou. Now, Shidou is pretty interesting because in terms of individual ability, he's pretty bad. In terms of individual ability, all he's capable of doing by himself is dribbling past Ikaguri and passing the ball to Ren a few times. Without having somebody to help him or a world-class passer on his shoulder, Shidou is pretty useless. He might be unstoppable in the penalty box, but that doesn't mean anything if he doesn't have a world-class passer to pass to him. As unstoppable as he is in the penalty box, if the passer is not as elite as he is in the box, then he can't score. He can't shoot, or if he has somebody on him, they'll usually stop the pass before it gets to him. Or like for an example, when Kunigami was locking him up and Charles couldn't get a pass to him, he makes him utterly useless. So Shidou, in terms of his actual ability to do things on his own, is terrible. But when you pair him together with Charles, somebody that I would consider the same level of passing as Sai, maybe not playmaking, but the same level as passing as Sai, he can actually, do some things. Him and Charles together are a good combination, but before I get into the feats they've accomplished together, let me talk about the fact that Shidou in the box is pretty scary. Let's take the fact that he needs a world-class passer alone. If the ball can get to him, he's scoring the goal in the penalty box. I think that he has the best scoring in the penalty box. It's been stated by Isagi that like, oh, he made a shot from an impossible stance again in the Barca game. And I'm assuming that's a pass that Charles gave him. But again, still, it's like, we have to acknowledge the fact that if the ball gets to him and he's in the penalty box, he's going to score it, right? But it depends on how he gets there, because depending on who's passing to him, the pass might not go through. Now, let's talk about Shidou and Charles, both on the same field together doing this. Shidou and Charles are one of the best dynamic duos we've gotten in the Neo Egos League, right? And this is because they were able to reproduce Isagi and Hiyori's reflex goal with no time wasted. They did this within like 3 or 4 chapters of the game. And why this is so incredible is because this feat, the reflex feat, was able to pass by Uber's defense, which is the best defense in the Neo Egos League. And the fact that they were just able to replicate it like that off the go shows that these two are not playing around. There's definitely levels to this. So with the way they move, that combination is pretty good, the reflex X reflex, but it doesn't really secure them this win over Nagi and Reo. And I'll explain why in a second, right? The reflex X reflex goal is good. Don't get me wrong. It's great. But I don't feel like that's all that there is to it, right? Because what makes a good duo isn't just a one compatible play. Because I kid you not, this is the only play him and Shidou really do that is successful. Besides when Kunigami gets on him, he can't do anything else, right? So it's the only play they do that is successful, and this is the only goal Shidou scores throughout the game, right? And you could blame it on Kunigami guarding him, or you could just say that, maybe Shidou just can't reproduce that again because Kunigami's on him. That means if a defender is on him of pretty solid magnitude, I feel like that he would get locked up. And I think that everybody else feels that way, right? So, moving on from them, right? We have Reo. Now, we are talking about specifically Reo from the Manshine game. We won't give him his other Evolve versions because I don't think that would be fair. Same thing with Charles and Shidou and PXG if I didn't already mention that. But Reo in Manshine game was actually one of the most dominant players in the game. He is able to pass like Saitoshi. He's able to dribble like Saitoshi. So let's go off the fact that Saitoshi's skills and his passing are already world class. Reo should just be a slight percentage below that on top of the already physical abilities that he already has. The physical abilities in question that I'm talking about that Reo has is the fact that he did training with Chris Prince, which even Isagi states that his strength is on an entirely different level from him. And on top of that, we know that Reo also has the defensive weapons that the U20 defenders have. So he just has that as his use. He doesn't use them because I'm pretty sure he doesn't need them, but he does have that as his use. He also has Ren's curve shot, which should be still worse than U20 Ren's curve shot, but it's still nonetheless supposed to be. It's notable, right? And on top of that, in this game, we are going to give him Metavision because, well, he does unlock Metavision. He does definitely utilize it when he's playing with Nagi. So, on top of that, he has the evolved chameleon style, which I'm going to assume is really just his awakened flow, honestly, because he starts playing like a tier above what he was playing before with Nagi, right? So, in terms of that, Reo, on an individual level alone, is pretty formidable. He has a bunch of weapons at his disposal, great physical, a shot, he can dribble, he can pass, he can do everything. He's one of the most versatile in the New Eagles League. I shouldn't need to tell you guys that, right? Now, let's get into my favorite, actually, Nagi Seishiro. Now, Nagi in the Manshine game has a world-class physique, I'd say. He was able to hold back 2 Bastard Munching defenders while he was turned around. And he was able to control the ball, which is pretty impressive. We also know that Nagi's passing and his field IQ is definitely a few tiers above than what it used to be. Just off the fact that he's able to coordinate with Agi and bring up a crazy play. And this is prior to his awakening. But once he awakens, his trapping is pretty much untouchable. Nobody can stop him in Reo's combinations. Especially when he's paired up with Reo, his creativity just flourishes, and you can't stop him with his trapping and his ball control. Nagi's dribbling also isn't that bad. With the 0 reset turn, he can pretty much reset any play back to normal and just start to become a playmaker. Of course, this wouldn't be in character anymore because, well, he awakens halfway throughout the game. And with his combinations with Reo, it shows that he's just one of the most agile players in the field. I'm pretty sure it's noted one time about how he's one of the most agile players in the field. On top of that, we have one of the best feats in the series, which is the 5-stage revolver, which he does do individually. Even though he does receive the pass from Reo, everything from that point on, it's not like he's shooting from the pass. He feints it 5 times and then shoots. So on an individual level, he's also pretty formidable. Honestly, I'd argue that you cannot stop the 5-stage revolver without prep time. And to be fair, I don't think Charles and Shidou would be able to stop that regardless. But that's not even the point that we're getting into right now, right? That's not even the point we're getting into right now. Now, after going over most of Nagi's abilities, because he doesn't have any vision abilities, but his trap and his shooting are definitely formidable, and his physicals are definitely something we need to talk about. But now we can finally compare these two as a duo. And before we even get into any of their skills, attributes, or anything, I want to talk about the chemistry between Shidou and Charles compared to Nagi and Reo. Now, Shidou and Charles' chemistry is good, but it's more of like a fling a little bit, right? Like, because Shidou and Charles don't do anything like this in prior games before. So that shows that their chemistry was pretty moderate until that one play, and then that's when they kind of like flew for a little bit, right? But after that play, their chemistry is kind of broken by Kunigami. But we can see when they're both, synergized, that they can reach a world-class level with Reflex X Reflex. Although Nagi and Reo, on the other hand, have been playing since first selection and pretty much know each other's brains, because during their combinations, they don't mess up one time. They're on the same wavelength. Reo is even able to predict what Nagi's ego wants, which is pretty crazy. You could actually argue that Reo was able to understand the protagonist's feeling, and that would upscale him also. So I do think when it comes to pure chemistry, Nagi and Reo do take the cake very easily. They've been playing for longer, they know each other longer, they understand each other longer, and yeah. So let's talk about how these two actually compare to each other. Because when it comes to getting down the field and breaking through the defense, Nagi and Reo take this without a problem. Now, Shidou and Charles do get past a bastard Munchin's defense, but this isn't without the help of the field just being in a chaos and disarray, with like Ren and Isagi being on the field and Kaiser being there. But everybody is bunched up together, like basically assaulting everybody for the ball. And while this is going on, Charles sends a crazy pass that nobody expects to Shidou, which he's the only one to react to it. Now, does he necessarily get past Bastard's defense? No. Everybody's distracted, and Charles threw a through ball that was supposed to go to Ren but went to Shidou. So he surpassed Bastard's vision, I'll say. He surpassed Bastard's vision, but not their actual defense. But nonetheless, Shidou's still able to score on a one-on-one against Gagamaru, and Gagamaru is pretty impressive, right? Now, let's put this in comparison with Nagi and Reo, who actually break through Bastard's defense, and on top of that, are able to outsmart Gagamaru by the end of the game with that shot-like pass that Reo did, right? And he outsmarted him, and Isagi was able to bail out Gagamaru. Now, talking about that move, just on a level of Reo and Nagi just being able to outsmart everybody on the field besides Isagi is a feat on its own. Because I'd argue that Man-Shine Isagi is like on a spatial awareness level still definitely above Charles and Shidou on a spatial awareness level when it comes to defense and offense, right? Now, this is mainly suggested by the fact just because he was on flow, right? But even taking in consideration Shidou and Charles' Reflex X Reflex play, they have no other real combination feat besides like a few 1-2 passes. But Nagi and Reo have a multitude of 1-2 passes and combination breaks, and they break through Bastard Munch's defense by themselves. And Reo is able to use Metavision to make a perfect through ball for Nagi to beat Isagi and Kaiser. And I do think Isagi and Kaiser do have better defense than Charles and Shidou at this point, just off the fact that their spatial awareness and Metavision are just on an entirely different tier, just even in this game, right? And they both end up losing to Nagi, right? And I think the 5-stage revolver is one of the most unguardable things in the manga in general. But when you compare this to Shidou's reflex goal, I think it's pretty even. And I think the separating factor is the difficulty of Nagi's goal compared to the difficulty of Shidou's goal. And I don't think the difficulty cap was as high as the 5-stage revolver when it comes in comparison to beating two defenders and just running to the through ball and getting a header goal on Gagamaru. And on top of that, Nagi and Reo were also able to outsmart Gagamaru. So it's not like they wouldn't be able to score on Gagamaru as well, right? So I think when you put these two up against each other on who is the better dynamic duo, who will perform better in a game, I think you can only say that it's Reo and Nagi. Reo and Nagi have everything you want. They have defense, they have offense, they have field IQ. That is mostly carried by Reo, but obviously I would say that Nagi has more field IQ than Shidou. Shidou doesn't have any field intelligence feats, right? Shidou and Charles are just too one-dimensional to be better than Nagi and Reo. Nagi and Reo can not only shoot, but they can break down the entire field and set up another player for a goal like Chigiri can, right? But Shidou and Charles don't have that type of freedom that Nagi and Reo have because of their combinations and their chemistry and just the superb level they were playing in that game, right? So I think if you put them two head to head, I think exactly what would happen is Reo would just try and mark Shidou, which I think he's fully capable of because he was able to do something similar in the U20 game. He can just mark Shidou and stop a pass from getting to Shidou, and then when they get back on offense, there's nothing for Shidou or Charles to do. And if you put them in a real game setting, I just think Nagi and Reo are just outperforming them every single time. Shidou and Charles can't stop anything that Nagi and Reo can do, while Reo can at least make a good attempt to halt or stop Shidou from being able to score a goal. And Nagi can also trap passes and stop and intercept things, right? Because of his ball control. So I think it's a pretty close debate, but I do think that Nagi and Reo are the clear winner when you really look at the bigger picture of things and who is more versatile and even who can create the more goals, because I do think Nagi and Reo had more goal scoring opportunities than Shidou has. And of course, you can blame Kunigami for Shidou's scaling being a little off, but I do think even if you put Reo on him, there's a few intercepts that Reo's getting on Charles's passes just due to Charles's playmaking being more immature and not evolved yet, and him more lead passing on impulse than anything else, right? So this was a pretty long topic for today, and I honestly hope you guys enjoyed it. I had so much fun making this video, and hey, like and subscribe to join the community and the family. I was so amazed to see on my community post that I saw people like arguing and talking. Some of my 2 favorite subscribers were doing that too. And I just thought it was a pretty enjoyable thing to watch, right? Now I will bid you all a farewell, and I hope you guys have a great day. Peace.